Okay, folks. First, I'm going to start off with my contact information. A lot of times when you go to webinars, sometimes you have to duck out. It's lunchtime, or you get a call. So I want to give my contact information up front. I think I also have it at the end of this as well. So if anyone needs to reach out with me with any questions, there's my contact information right below there. Okay? Give you a second to jot that down before we move on. Now, as part of this webinar, we're going to have some special pricing that is going to be announced today during this for attendees of this webinar only. So we realize that your time is worth something. So we want to make sure we're compensating you for that. We appreciate your attendance today. And also, as a special thank you, we're also very confident that you're going to want to adopt this product. So much so that we are offering a 30-day fully functioning demo of QBTrack. At the end of this webinar, we are going to have a link to that demo download so you can try it as if you were a regular paying user of the product, as any one of our users would, because we're very confident that you're going to want to adopt this product. So again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. As you're aware, today we're going to be discussing one of our productivity products for Tigerpaw, which is QBTrack. I myself am always very interested in knowing where products come from. So it helps me understand why I might want that product. You know, products are usually born of a need, sometimes one that we don't even know we have until we have the product. Now, we kind of make a bold claim here in this that, say goodbye to manual batches. Now, that was something that we wish to have in our own company, and I'll give you a little bit of our origin story as to where QBTrack came from. Just so you folks know, we are Tigerpaw users just like you are. QBTrack was really created based on our experiences with Tigerpaw. Not that we had a bad experience with Tigerpaw, but we found something that we wanted to improve upon. We had development team on here. We've always had development staff, and it was something that we wished to add in. The batching process for us got old. It, as you're going to see in a few minutes, costs you some time in your business, and we wanted to spend our time as much as possible being productive. That's pretty much how we run our business here. We don't like seeing a lot of wasted time doing things, a lot of wasted clicks here and there. Not that Tigerpaw always wasted clicks, but a lot of wasted clicks to any programs, a lot of redundant effort. We don't want to touch something twice because that's just, quite frankly, is a waste of time. Now, the question I get asked a lot of time is, do I need to make the switch to QBTrack? Because my manual batching works fine. Our manual batching works fine. The manual batch with Tigerpaw works great. So the big secret is you do not need to switch to QBTrack. Manual batching is not going to be discontinued in their product. Some people see our product out there and say, oh my gosh, Tigerpaw has discontinued manual batching. Now I have to buy something else. That is not the case at all. QBTrack does not replace batching. It automates it, and it improves upon it in the areas that I'm going to show you. And that's an important concept because you need to get the manual batching functioning first before you can use QBTrack. So once the manual batching is rolling, at that point you are ready for QBTrack. So an existing Tigerpaw user who is currently batching could essentially strap Tigerpaw on to their existing setup. In order to take some care of some of the more advanced features or to take advantage of some of the more advanced features of QBTrack, you may have some additional configuration, but really not too much. If you're not currently batching right now, we have another product that can help QBTrack or QuickBooks users, pardon me, the names get very jumbled sometimes in my head, is going to help QuickBooks users get that integration rolling, but we're not going to be talking about that today. If you have some questions, we can certainly field them at the end, but that will be a topic for another day. Another question that I get asked very frequently at the user conferences and just talking to people on the phone is they say, I'm a small company. I don't need to worry about this. That's something I hear a lot because users think, I'm just one guy, I shouldn't have any of the problems that a larger company is going to have. Now, in my view, you may need to worry about this even more than a large company if you are a smaller enterprise due to one primary issue. Small companies do not have the resources of a larger company. Time is, quite frankly, in my book, I've worked in really small businesses over the years, time's a lot more precious in a small company. So what we're talking about today is going to involve time as one of the advantages of QBTrack. Large companies, quite honestly, can absorb a little bit more overhead than what a small company can absorb. So here's the 3 key reasons why you would want to use QBTrack: speed, accuracy, and diagnostics, which we believe is not as available inside the manual batch. And we're going to go through these reasons. Accuracy and diagnostics are going to cover more during the actual demo process. Speed I'm going to talk about over the next few minutes. Now, we always get into that constant age-old balancing act. When is the time to automate? That's really the key question in anything you're doing. When is the time to automate any business function? When is the time to go from a peer-to-peer network to a full-blown network, or move from a standard desktop to a network? We all went through that in our businesses. A lot of those things we dealt with years and years ago, I hope. So what we're going to do is now talk a little bit about, is it now time for you to automate these processes? And what do you always weigh back and forth? Time versus investment. Is the amount of time I'm spending, is that worth me spending a few more dollars in order to save time? That's what I'd like you to ask yourselves today. Now, we believe in our analysis over the years, and I'm going to ask you during this webinar and afterwards, and hopefully if you take advantage of the demo that we're offering, I want you to see if this can save you 30 minutes a day. We believe it does. I had a user the other day tell me it saves him at least an hour and a half a day. Now, that may be a situation where the guy has not configured his accounting as set up, but at a minimum, this is saving 30 minutes a day. And I'm going to ask you to, again, consider these options on here, or these reasons as to why. It eliminates the need to switch to single user mode, and we're going to explain what that is. We're going to explain what all these are. It eliminates dual application of payments. Eliminates credit hold maintenance. It eliminates the mystery of errors you may run across in the batching process, in the manual batching process. And it is going to eliminate vendor bill entry. Now, for those of you who are newer users and maybe not have the integration moving at this point in time, you might not know what that means. So we're going to hopefully explain that to you. And if we haven't explained it to you, ask us to, because I will make sure anyone leaves here today doesn't understand the advantages. So 30 minutes a day. What does that mean labor-wise? Doesn't seem like a big deal. 5 minutes a day adding up over the course of a week, over the course of a year is a big deal. Average rate for a bookkeeper is $19.23, excluding fringe benefits. Now, I've done some research on the internet. Check it out yourself. Look at what you're paying, either yourself or other bookkeepers who might be working for you in the company. Look at their hourly rate, add in their fringes. 30 minutes a day at 236 working days a year, essentially 32 cents per minute. That's over $2,200 that you're saving. And that's how I view QBTrack. We view it as a savings. So if someone's going to tell me that I'm saving $2,200, I'm going to be pretty happy as a company. We're always looking to, if we're getting a technology, to justify why we're getting that technology. What's the advantage of it? We ask our customers, or we tell our customers when they're buying products from us, hey, this is going to save you money in your business. You can be more productive. That's what we're exactly telling you here. They could also view this the opposite way. I choose to take the previous view. You could say I've been wasting over $2,200 a year. Depends on your view of the world. Either way, it should be something you could consider, whether you're wasting money or whether you're going to be saving yourself money now. Now, I know there's some of you right now who are saying, not in my world, there's no way you are saving me 30 minutes in my business. Maybe you're right, but I'm going to ask you to consider these things as we move through. And ask yourself, how long does it take you to do this? Has this ever happened to me? We're going to start with the first item we've mentioned previously is single user mode. As you may be aware with the manual batch inside Tigerpaw, and inside Tigerpaw it deals with QuickBooks. Once you get into QuickBooks, you need to be logged into single user mode. You need to be logged in, as you can see right there. I'm going to try and do an import, and I can show you this when we move to QuickBooks in a minute. It's not allowed in multi-user mode. You need to be a system admin, or at least have certain rights in order to import the data into the system. So, off the bat, do I wish to give someone admin rights? Do I wish to give someone the ability to import information into my accounting system? Or you end up exposing areas that maybe you didn't want to, because QuickBooks has pretty granular security, much more so on the enterprise side of things, not as granular, I don't think, in my view, at least, as what Tigerpaw is. So you can end up exposing your bookkeeper, someone else in the company who's handling the batch imports, an AR clerk maybe, who's doing these batches, you may inadvertently expose them to an area of QuickBooks that you didn't want them to see. Maybe you're giving them access to cash balances. Maybe you're giving them access to a profit and loss statement, heaven forbid, and you don't want them having that. So that's one thing to consider. That's not required with QBTrack, as I'm going to show you. Upon the initial setup, it will prompt you to be an admin. You need to be an admin when you set it up, but that's the only time you need to access it that way. The manual batch requires you to be in single user mode. I don't know if this has ever happened in your business or not. You're logged into your QuickBooks, you're logged in multi-user mode, you have other parties in the organization that are using it, and you need to reach out to them. You make the old phone call to them and say, hey, Corey, can you get out of QuickBooks for me? I need to do the import. Corey is away from his desk. Maybe he had to leave to a customer site. Maybe he had to go talk to the boss or talk to someone in the warehouse. Maybe some Corey, not you Corey, but the other Corey, the bad Corey, is out on a smoke break, maybe talking somewhere. So Corey, for whatever reason, is not at his desk. And again, two things I want to be cognizant of here is the taking of time. And again, you're going to see this on each of the slides that I have here with the average bookkeeper. I show you, if you move through these, how much time are you spending with that happening? Remember, $19.23 excluding fringes per hour that you're spending to have this happen. Now, someone said to me a while back that a lot of companies view a bookkeeper as a sunk cost. It's a fixed cost. You got to pay it anyway. True statement. You still need to pay that bookkeeper is true, but don't you want them to be productive during that hour they're spending for that $19.23? It's a cost you have to pay, but why have them wasting time when they could be out making a collection call, paying another bill? Why do you want them having to do something manually? Other way you could reach out is by an email. How many emails? You're probably going to end up with 30 emails during the course of this webinar, or, maybe 10, 30 emails, depending on how busy you are. That takes time to type that. It takes time for someone else to be able to get to that email. Again, time is ticking away. The single user mode coffee Klatch, as I like to call it. What happens, sometimes you can't find Corey. Corey's outside. As we said, the smoke break, you walk out and talk to Corey, or you walk, Corey's in the lunchroom, and you end up starting to talk to Corey, or whoever you happen to meet upon the way. You start talking about the basketball game last night, or what's going on in NFL free agency, or what's going to be happening with the NFL draft, or what's going on with your kids, while the time ticks away and you guys are spending time at a waste, essentially. Double application of payment. We mentioned that previously. Tigerpaw has the ability to batch cash receipts out of its system. But as part of the IIF import, Tigerpaw does not have the ability to apply that payment against the invoice inside QuickBooks. So essentially what will happen is you will have an invoice that will go over as an open credit on the customer's account. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to need to enter your payment inside Tigerpaw, and then you will need to go into QuickBooks, open QuickBooks, go to your cash receipts. You could hit back arrow to go to previous cash receipt and apply that to the appropriate invoice in question. And we're going to talk about at the end of this, and I'm going to put this concept in your head. Suppose you're a cash basis taxpayer and you don't do that. So we're going to talk about that more in a little bit, but for those who are cash based, you'll realize the ramifications. And again, how much time is that costing you to do that? Now, the argument I'll be given is, I don't care about entering my payments in Tigerpaw. That's great that Tigerpaw has cash receipts. Not important for me. I do all my cash receipts in QuickBooks. That's where my cash should be kept. I can make an argument for that, but that's making the assumption that your operations department needs no visibility. Doesn't need to know whether an invoice has been paid. I don't think that's the case. I think someone needs to know that an invoice has been paid, particularly from the sales department. Sales department sends a text to you, has the invoice for ABC Inc. been paid yet? They could look in Tigerpaw and see that. Wouldn't that be an easier way of doing it than having to send you a text, send you an email, pick up the phone? Again, the clock is ticking, and that's what you guys need to think about. Credit hold. As you guys are probably aware, and we'll show you where to do this in Tigerpaw for those who might not know this, Tigerpaw has the ability to put accounts on credit hold in the system. And depending on your security rights, that can block you from putting in a service ticket, which is going to stop you from, essentially adding insult to injury by having a customer out there who is not paying you, and then you go out and service them. Now, it's quite a manual function if you're trying to match your aging from your accounting system. And sometimes you feel a little bit robotic taking people on credit hold and removing them from credit hold. Because last thing you want, heaven forbid, say you do stop service to someone. I usually don't recommend that. A lot of times I'll have people that get the pop-up and have the bookkeeper or the dispatcher or everyone be talking to them, warn them a little bit that, hey, your account's a little bit behind times here. Kind of use it as a collection vehicle. Some customers, if they're a complete flat-out deadbeat, you're going to want to do that collection on them at that point in time and not do service until you get that check, either a credit card or check or however you're going to be getting paid. So that function of going into Tigerpaw and flagging account for credit hold, you can do that with workflow events, but removing from credit hold also becomes a problem. So are you guys losing money for servicing accounts that you shouldn't be? Are you losing money spending time flagging accounts from credit hold and then flagging them again to remove or unflagging them to be removed from credit hold? The mystery of errors. If any of you have ever done the manual batch in Tigerpaw, and hopefully yours is set up perfectly, and maybe you never get an error, I'm going to wager that's not going to happen for you. We all get them every now and again. So one of the functions of the manual batch in QuickBooks is you get this wonderful innocuous error. I call it the error on line 7 rage. And you cannot record that invalid transaction. Now you need to open up the batch and find out what went wrong and figure out what happened on line 7. Now we're starting to get the clock ticking again, aren't we? Now we've got to open that batch, find that batch, and we're going to show you in a second what a batch actually looks like. Another error you're going to see. You can't associate an item with sales tax payable, undeposited funds, accounts receivable, accounts payable, so forth. Well, what invoice was that? Can you tell? I can't. So now we're going to look a second here at what a batch looks like. And, they're structured very well. But for someone who doesn't have any kind of data knowledge or isn't good at it, doesn't remember how to do it, you now have to go into support potentially and call Tigerpaw support. Hey, I got a batch error. Or, heaven forbid, someone has to print out the batch and check off one by one. What invoice came in? Oh, this invoice didn't come in. I'm just going to key it in manually inside QuickBooks. That takes some time, doesn't it? Especially when you have a number of batches that are of this size. And this actually isn't that large of a batch. It was one of the larger ones in my system. Okay, simply because I'm using QBTrack and my batches are limited to a very small snippet. And again, we do maintain those batches, as I'm going to show you in a second. So if you are not a data expert, how are you handling that in your business? Are you investigating? Are you calling Tigerpaw support? Not that Tigerpaw support is very quick, but are you spending time doing that? Either Tigerpaw support picks you up in 30 seconds, solves you in a minute. That's a minute and a half that you wasted. I like to call this the overwrote my batch headbang. How many times has someone or you in your company overwritten the batch and realized, crap, I never imported that from yesterday? Suppose you overwrite it, but never even realize you didn't import it. You do the export out of Tigerpaw, and we're going to show you how to do that. And before you get to do the import in the QuickBooks, your boss calls you, customer calls you, you have to move away from your desk, one of your kids calls you, and you forget to do the import. We talked earlier about, or I said I would mention accuracy on the slide previous or several back. That's accuracy right there. Your numbers inside of your accounting system are wrong. Your receivables are wrong. You may never collect that money. Maybe some of the bills you sent out from Tigerpaw would be paid, you hope. But if they're not, the customer doesn't pay that bill, where would your record be of that? But you've been looking at your receivables very likely inside QuickBooks. How would you know that didn't get paid? It can happen. And for those of you who are doing it, if it hasn't happened to you, it very well might at some point. The purchases liability account, or I like to call this eliminates the vendor bill entry. Tigerpaw has 3 ways of getting purchases out of the system. The first way is with the GL batch method, which I can get into if anyone doesn't understand that. It is going to be essentially a journal entry for every purchase or every line item you've received on a purchase order. Usually debiting inventory, crediting a temporary liability account. Then you get the vendor bill in, you debit that temporary liability account, and you credit accounts payable. Now, one with that journal entry method with the manual batch, you cannot drill down from your P&L to take a look at the cost of goods sold, and I can show you that as well if someone needs to see it, because there's one of the natures of how the automated batch was done is that doesn't allow to drill down. Our program will allow that for a cost of goods sold and also for a purchase. So the other method of getting purchased out of Tigerpaw is off what Tigerpaw calls their PO batch. I'm going to show you the issues with that. The third way is with QBTrack, which actually will allow for vendor bill entry inside the accounting system. Now, this purchase liability account is probably, I'm going to say maybe top 2 in the issues I run across, because I do consulting work for Tigerpaw, do implementations, and I'll get calls every now and again. I get a call at the year end, and those of you who've listened to me before have probably heard this story, so I'll apologize in advance. But I don't know, about 2-3 years ago, it was right before the fine. It was an S Corp called me, a controller from an S Corp called me, and he said that their outside accountant had just come in. Actually, it was the owner, not the controller. It was the owner of the company. He didn't have the controller. So the outside CPA came in, said, oh, you have no estimates due, you're great. In fact, you've lost money this year, so you're not going to have any estimates due at January 15th because they're an S Corp. It's going to flow through their personal return. The guy called me, says, oh, I have no estimates due, but God, I should be making money. First I install Tigerpaw, I'm losing money, which is not kind of good endorsement, and it's not an indictment of Tigerpaw. It's an indictment of how this fellow was running his business. He was using this temporary liability account approach, but was not following the processes that he was taught by Tigerpaw during the training. He did not debit the temporary liability account. He was continuing to debit purchases when he bought product. So he was double dipping his cost of goods sold to the tune of $250,000. He had a $250,000 liability that was sitting on his balance sheet. That's a lot of money. Now, he wasn't doing his bookkeeping appropriately, so that problem could have been resolved at that point in time, but how many people does that happen to? Another thing that's possible sometimes with the manual batch is it's essentially a brute force attack, what one user worded it to me as, on the QuickBooks database. And what will happen that sometimes with the manual batch, again impacting the balance sheet, if a general ledger account doesn't exist inside QuickBooks, Tigerpaw with the manual batch, and it's not Tigerpaw, just QuickBooks will just create that account inside the system. So now you have an account that might have been a revenue account, gets created as a bank account. So now you're looking at your P&L, and maybe that's what all you ever look at. Not that you should do that, but you should look at your balance sheet. You should be taking a balance sheet approach to your business. But if you're just looking at your P&L, maybe as an owner, you don't understand the balance sheet. One, I would tell you to understand it, have someone teach it to you. But if you don't and don't have the time to do that, and you run your P&L, you could be missing $1,000, $100, $100,000 that's trapped on your balance sheet as a bank account. That's not a bank account. It's revenue that should be to your bottom line. So as I said previous, we mimic the batch approach with Tigerpaw, but we go beyond what the batch approach's functionality is. Now, some of these I've already talked about briefly. Multi-user access. Don't need to have multi-user go. You can be in multi-user while our project's running. You don't need to switch to single-user mode, as I said previously. Error correction. We're going to give you the reason as to why something failed with a human-readable error. So you're not going to get error line 7. We're going to tell you GL account doesn't exist. Customer account doesn't exist in database. Sales tax code doesn't exist. Makes it a whole lot easier to fix. Also, when you have that error, we showed you the error on line 7 before. When you get that, as you folks are probably aware, all the other invoices in that batch are going to come in except that one. Now, you have to go into that batch to figure out which one it is. We will send all the items in, but we leave the offending invoice, the one that has the error, still in the batch inside Tigerpaw. That way you can simply go back, fix the error, reflag it essentially by clearing the errors in our program to send it back over from Tigerpaw into QuickBooks. Vendor export, I'm going to demonstrate that. Multiple inventory accounts, we've had an enhancement to our product, but we would allow you to hit different inventory accounts in the accounting system. And I'm going to show you another issue with the manual batch regarding that. Cash application, you don't need to double apply that. Credit hold, we discussed that. Use of items. We will allow you to actually send an item from Tigerpaw over to QuickBooks. Manual batch does not do that. You don't have to do it now. A lot of times I don't necessarily even recommend doing it, but for those of you who are the die-hard QuickBooks users where you have to run certain reports out of QuickBooks, I'm going to tell you first, you can run those out of Tigerpaw. But if you really need to have it, we could create items inside QuickBooks. Vendor bill creation, we can also create a vendor bill, as I mentioned. Timesheet integration. We can send time logs from Tigerpaw into QuickBooks. So now we're going to give you some reasons as to why we should be on your radar in your business as a possible functionality you wish to add to enhance your already hopefully great Tigerpaw experience. Now to me, the proof has always been in the reveal of a product. I can talk about it all day. I did a couple slides and I appreciate your patience for sitting through those. Now it's time to really show you what QBTrack is all about. So we're going to head into first our Tigerpaw. And first what I want to show you is, for those of you, again, I don't know necessarily the audience who was in attendance at this point in time, and I don't have your profile in front of me here, so some of you guys may not even be utilizing Tigerpaw, may not have the integration rolling at this point in time. So for those of you who don't know how to do that, do the manual batch, here you go. You can come out under Tools, Accounting, Configure and Create Accounting Batches. You're going to export customers. You're going to export your invoices, which is what the AR batch is. You're going to export GL batch, which is either your purchases or it could also be your cost of goods sold. AR payment is going to be your cash receipts from Tigerpaw into QuickBooks, and your PO batch is going to be your POs. I'm going to tell you one of the limitations of that in just a second. Exporting customers is just what it says. It cannot export vendors. We can take vendors with our product. Okay. This is QBTrack. QBTrack will hang between Tigerpaw and QuickBooks. Can be loaded on your server. Needs to be loaded somewhere that your QuickBooks is loaded, because we need to be an integrated application with QuickBooks, which is what we are. So if you go to your Edit Preferences and I go to Integrated Applications, you're going to see our product right there, Tigertrack QBTrack component. So we're built in. We're utilizing QuickBooks as SDK to accomplish what we need to do. So also inside QBTrack, we have several modules. Now as you're going to see me running, ours is set to run. You can see we're actually in the middle of executing right now. You can always see what's happening. Mine is set to run every minute. Most users probably do it every 10 minutes. So you can see exactly what's happening. This is going to be rolling in 40 seconds. I mentioned to you previously what happens with errors. We're going to tell you if you've had a success. And all I've had in this is success. Oh, I had one error right there on their detail, so I flagged that error. I never fixed it. I just was doing a demonstration. I didn't even bother fixing that one. But we're going to tell you that you've had a success, and we're going to tell you why. Again, with a human-readable error that you can hover. We have a free report out on our website. They can load and run right out of Tigerpaw without even having to go to QBTrack to look at that. Under the options, we have several modules. We have an account export module, invoice export module, and here you can choose, as I said previously, to send generic items over. We can send something that's just called a part or labor just to get something on there, so certain of the reports in QuickBooks will run, or we can send unique items over. We have the GL export, which is the cost of goods sold, payment export, PO export, timesheet export. Now the timesheet export essentially allows you, and this takes a second to come up here for extracting from QuickBooks, we will actually allow you to map your reps in Tigerpaw to who they are inside QuickBooks. We map our rate bases and our time log reasons to the QuickBooks payroll items. Okay, so I'm going to come out, and I'm now going to go into Tigerpaw, and I am going to create a new customer. Of course, part of these webinars sometimes is you run out of names. So we're going to go with webinar stores here. Hopefully I spell everything right. And I'm going to give them a phone number. And we're going to give them a rep. And I've already used that phone number previously. I had to use it a few minutes ago for a demo I was on. And we're going to give it a rep of Joe Webinar. What we're also going to do now is we're going to create a vendor. I apologize for the typing there, but we'll minimize that in the rest of the demo. Well, a new town there, so I spelled it wrong. For a vendor, I come out here, and I supply them with a vendor ID. They're going to be flagged for export automatically when you create the account. So we're going to roll in. That probably executed already. I can tell right there. So we created Mr. Webinars. Go to our Customer Center. Webinar stores. Created in the system. No effort, no manual batching. And there's our information on the vendor or on the customer. So if I were to have to do that manually, well, I showed you what you did in Tigerpaw. I didn't show you what you had to do in QuickBooks. Again, log in, switch to single user mode. I'm already in single, thankfully. Log in as administrator with the rights to do that. Go to Utilities, Import, IF file. 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially 5 files I got to bring in with the errors that could go along with those. Okay? That's what we were talking about trying to save some time. Mr. IT vendor, you saw that coming through. Here's our Mr. IT, and he'll also be up under the vendor area as well. I gave him an AR customer number as well because I'm going to assume this guy is a customer as well. Usually you're going to take that off. That's how he came in as a vendor. Sometimes in Tigerpaw, I don't know if you guys have run across it, quite a lot. Sometimes your vendors are also customers. Now, if I left that AR customer number off of there, I have it being created automatically for demo purposes. I usually don't advise you having that. But if I just let him be a vendor and left that blank, what would happen is all I would get would be the vendor at that point in time. Okay, over in the system. So if it's something you're buying from, I don't know, Home Depot is your vendor, and you're not lucky enough to have them as a customer, you would just have the Home Depot be created as a vendor. Okay, so we saw the vendor creation. We saw our customer creation, again, with no intervention at all from you. Now let's go create a service ticket, and I'm going to use one for Memo Inc. I already had one previous. Well, I promised I would save you some typing, so I'm going to save you some typing here. So I'm going to duplicate the previous ticket. So I'm going to duplicate the service order. I'm going to grab it just for parts and labor used. Okay, so here is our new ticket. Under our parts and labor, I got a boatload of this product in inventory, so we're going to pretend, for argument's sake, that I do not have this product in inventory right now. I'm going to come out and I'm going to create a new purchase order. So I'm going to purchase for this service order, and again, I'm going to move quickly through this end of it, so if you are a new user and don't use the PO wizard, certainly feel free. You can ask me a question at the end. I'll be happy to entertain it for you. So we're going to order all items on this. And shame on me, I don't have primary vendor set for all my parts in this database, so forgive me. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to use the order detail estimated cost. And here is my PO. Now, as I said previously, if you're doing a manual batch approach, we would have a general journal entry going over once I receive product. So I'm going to receive, 4 of these right here. And I'm going to receive 1 of these. And I'll receive 1 of these as well. Okay? Real world example. So we're going to post that receipt. Nothing has happened in QuickBooks at this point in time as far as we're concerned. Nothing would happen with the way Tigerpaw would be concerned either with the manual batch. Now, I'm going to show you something that you need to be aware of. I mentioned the difference between the manual and the PO batch. With the manual link, you could inadvertently leave both of these turned on. Now that's, I believe, is going away in version 15, but as it stands right now for non-15 users, you could actually leave the PO batch and the GL batch running at the same time by accident. We don't allow that with QBTrack. We're going to shut it down. Now, we also will shut it down if you left a GL receipt code on one of your items in the price book. So if you guys decided to use our PO batch, we would need to remove those GL receipt codes. Easy SQL state, we can clear that out of there. Now, I mentioned Tigerpaw has a PO batch. You're saying, oh, okay, great, QBTrack, you guys have a PO batch. Tigerpaw has that too, which it does. So I come out here and I want to add this purchase order to the AB batch. 1, it's a manual function. 2, the PO is not complete. I can't do anything with it. I come to the end of the quarter. I come to the end of the month. I come to the end of the year. I cannot get this PO out of here because I chose to use a PO batch inside Tigerpaw, but I haven't fully received everything. Happens to us every week, every month, every year. Can't tell you when it hasn't happened. So let's go out here and we'll take a look at our PO number 377. and I could go under gray bar, but I got a boatload of them on there because I use that for whatever reason a lot. Here is our PO that now has been created inside QuickBooks. Again, for people who are not using the manual batch or any kind of integration right now, you don't get this with the manual batch. So now we have a purchase order. We can see what has been received on it, and if you look up under reports, look at the transaction history, I now have a vendor bill. Now, our vendor bill is going to be the PO number, unfortunately, but that becomes a checking tool in our company. So if we're running our aging report inside QuickBooks, I can look at gray bar, and I know as part of the verification, or if I'm going under vendor pay bills, I can differentiate between a gray bar bill and one of something that says the PO hasn't been verified yet. So all we'll do as part of our verification process, we would change the number to what gray bar's actual bill was. If I need to adjust it for a couple pennies or maybe $1 here and there, I can put it to a certain expense. But now I have completely done away with that temporary liability account. Now I know who I owe money to by vendor, and some people say, well, that's not an accounts payable yet, but it is a liability. It is a liability. It's something you owe money to. Now we could make this work under QuickBooks' parameters by using QuickBooks items as inventory items. We're creating special items or other charge items like QuickBooks to make the PO module work. We don't want to turn the inventory module on in QuickBooks because now you're stuck between Tigerpaw and QuickBooks. Tigerpaw doesn't allow for negative inventory items. QuickBooks could if someone did something in QuickBooks, so I don't want to be in that situation of having to do it that way. So I'll save that, it's fine. And now if I come back and receive the rest of this purchase order inside Tigerpaw, we're going to update that vendor bill. So I'm going to receive all. We're going to update probably not the vendor bill, the purchase order. So we'll give that, again, the minute to come through. I can force that over earlier with an execute all function that I'll show you, but there's really no reason to do this because I have other areas I want to show you. So now we're going to head back in, and we're going to go to back to our service ticket. This customer and credit hold, that's a function of our Ignite utility. You're also going to see that as part of our QBTrack utility. Ignite's another product that we offer. I'm not going to talk about today. It's really designed for setting in General Electric codes automatically. So QBTrack is going to put an account on hold. So if you're not utilizing credit hold inside Tigerpaw, it's a great function to use because it really puts it in your face that that customer has not paid their bill. So what's going to happen? We've ordered product right now. Hopefully you're going to work on this job. So I'm going to log in here now as enter a time login for Barbara. And we'll say Barbara worked from 10 a.m. and she worked 2 hours. And she installed equipment. So Barbara installed some equipment for us. And I'm going to save that log. Now I don't want to set a different billing option. And yes, I know. I probably typed something that's not in your dictionary. Now this time log does not leave Tigerpaw until you have fully, if someone has actually approved the log, but not fully received, until someone has approved the log. It's actually the receipt function of a log. So we follow Tigerpaw's best practices. That's kind of how we always try and do our development work. So we're following their best practice that we want time to be approved inside the accounting system, or probably inside Tigerpaw before it would leave. So if you're doing your payroll with Paychecks or ADP or some other payroll service might be local to you, if you're not having that integration, you could, and there is a Paychex integration that exists, you could, as best practices, still have time approval in your system. Still be a great thing to question those logs. But we don't send them out of the system until everything has been approved. Okay? So I'm going to come back now into my QuickBooks. You can see now that that purchase order has now been fully received. I'm also going to have now another vendor bill. That's going to be for the remainder of that receipt. So now that PO has been closed out in the system. If I come out under my employees, then hopefully this has passed through on my time here. Otherwise, it's a seconds off. And I will go to Barbara. And what did Barbara do? Barbara installed equipment for the webinar. Think of how easy that is for your payroll now. I've entered my time inside Tigerpaw, so we've stepped up. That's not available in the manual batching. That's a function that's exclusive to QBTrack. So we've now stepped up what the level of complexity is, the level of integration, the complexity of integration, the depth of the integration between Tigerpaw and QuickBooks. So imagine how fast that could make your payroll. So now we're going to go back to our service ticket now that we invoiced, or now we did our time, and we're now going to come back and we could use Easy Bill, but I'm not going to bother doing it in this situation. I'm going to fill all the parts, and I'm going to create an invoice. So I'm going to ignore that warning there, which you should not be ignoring, but I'm going to be bad and do that. And I'm going to close the ticket out. I'm going to approve it, and I am going to post. So our bill has now, or our bill to our customer has been posted. We've entered in our vendor bill based off of our purchases. So now this invoice is going to flow through into the system once posted. Now, how would you get it out of the system? Now, you wouldn't be doing this every time you post an invoice, but tools, accounting, configure and create AR batch. That's how you will be getting it out. Okay? So let's enter our AR payment for this. And as you know, you can enter in partial payments. We can work with that as well as Tigerpaw. And we're going to pay that invoice. And that is now ready to move to the accounting system. Now, I said previously that we utilize Tigerpaw's batches, so I want to kind of prove that out for you more about what I mean by that. So Tigerpaw's batches, we keep those right here. So I can look at what happened previously and find out what happened on an invoice. Okay, so if I now go out here to 8916, and I can just go to the customer account. I don't remember what customer it was though, sorry. By my link. Here is our invoice. And you can see the payment has come over as well. So I go to my reports, look at my transaction history. Here's my payment. Applied against the invoice in question. No effort, no having to go out and do previous and find which ones weren't applied. That's what you're going to get with the manual batch. Don't get that with this. So I come out under banking, make deposits. It is now entered into my accounting system. And I've had outside accountants come in who never even knew Tigerpaw was loaded once they look at this functionality. They don't even know Tigerpaw exists because it looks so much like QuickBooks, especially if you decide to turn the items on. As I said previously, we do use items on the PO module. So if you come out to an item, you're going to see the item ID from Tigerpaw, and you can see that little strange parentheses there. That's a key field inside Tigerpaw. It would avoid the duplication. As I said previously, Tigerpaw is a more powerful, there's wider fields available inside Tigerpaw for item IDs, so we had to truncate that. You will never have a duplicate of that because we're utilizing a unique key ID from Tigerpaw to ensure the fact that you're not going to have that, any kind of duplication of effort on there or have something, a duplication of a part. But again, we're not utilizing QuickBooks inventory other than the items. So if I now come out and go to my company and financial, go to profit and loss standard, do it for today. There we go. There's our profit and loss for today. And if I want to drill down, this is what you can't do with the manual batch. I can drill down and see what my cost of goods sold was, where it was, how it happened. I can also do a classified view. So you can see how powerful it is, how little amount of intervention there is on your part. If you do happen to run across any kind of an error, we can deal with it, help you resolve it, and it's not going to be something that someone forgets to bring in because you can look at our batches. We maintain your whole batching structure. No different if you were manually batching. Now my batch is going to be a lot smaller likely than yours are because mine's running every minute. And it'll be clearly smaller than a manual user, but if something had been a failure, it would stay in batch 0. Manual batch isn't going to do that. It's going to be out of your system for someone to forget, oh, I'm going to look at that error on line 7 later in a day. You forget, and that could be a $10,000 invoice, could be a $1 invoice, could be a $100,000 invoice. But now we're talking to accuracy. So I mentioned accuracy, I mentioned diagnostics. Diagnostics meaning our product doesn't give you those random errors on line 7 or some strange message that's going to pop up. We're going to tell you exactly why something failed. Accuracy, we're going to be bringing those transactions into the accounting system. Okay? So I'm going to head back here and ask you a couple of little things I want you to think of. So we talked about time savings. What about failing to apply a cash receipt to an invoice if you're cash basis? Actually had this happen a while back to me. Someone came to me, unfortunately, at the end of the year with this, and they were trying to compare their numbers between Tigerpaw and QuickBooks. And all of a sudden they realized that Tigerpaw had more revenue than what QuickBooks did. One, they didn't realize that the report they were looking at was not cash basis, but what it did when I looked at their database, uncover a problem. I ran their accounts receivable report, and I saw zeros on there. So my first comment to the customer was, an accounts receivable report in your accounting system is not a customer list, it's an accounts receivable report. You shouldn't see zeros on there. So that immediately led me to realize that they were not applying payments inside QuickBooks. And they were a cash basis taxpayer. So what does that mean? It means your sales tax liability report is not going to function correctly. Now, what I didn't show you here is that your QuickBooks sales tax liability report will function as if you were doing it in QuickBooks. There you go. There's our QuickBooks for today. There's a sales tax that was collected. Now, these guys were a cash basis taxpayer, so what happened? Cash basis, didn't apply payment, didn't reflect revenue, didn't reflect sales tax. The revenue was bad enough, but now you have a bad report to your taxing authority. What's the penalty going to be for that? And some of these things could have dated back to June, and this was the end of the year. It could be 6 months off. What's the penalty going to be for not doing that? That's not just having wrong information. Now you're talking dollars out of your pocket. I'd even put that in there. What's going to be the cost of a sales tax penalty that might result? What's going to be the cost of failing to put someone on credit hold in your company? You guys go out and you do service for someone and they don't pay the bill. Now you go out and service another customer, same customer again, adding insult to injury. What's the cost of that? Overwriting a batch, forgetting to import it. We talked about that briefly. Those invoices will now not be in the accounting system. Failing to fix an error. Same deal. You did a manual batch error on line 7. Someone called you, as I said just a few minutes ago. Brute force addition of GL accounts, revenue on the balance sheet. Again, the IF import is very forgiving. Too forgiving in my book. I don't want something hit. I don't want a customer being created. I don't want, again, a customer being created QuickBooks with essentially no information, because that can happen with a manual batch. You just have a AR customer number gets created, but no account address, nothing, because the brute force attack would essentially allow you that. The issue of a bank account being created simply because a GL account doesn't exist. Might not be a bank account, might be a revenue account. So before we move on to the codes that I want to give you for the special price, I want to ask if anyone has any questions at all. Just feel free to raise your hands, and Corey can unmute you, and we can see if you have any questions regarding what I've said or anything that we talked about.
All right, just to start off, Chris, we've got a couple of questions in the questions area here. First of all, can QuickBooks continue to be used by other users while the export is running in QBTrack?
Yes, absolutely. Again, you don't need to log into single user mode. You can be in multi-user mode, and we will essentially go in behind the scenes. You don't need to get everyone out of the system. So that, yes, the answer to that is yes. A resounding yes.
Is it available for CAD QB?
CAD QB. I'm not familiar with that version, CAD QB. Now, we function, just to let you know, we do not function with the online, the cloud versions, man, that was typewritten. It's not functioning with QuickBooks Online at the moment. We will work with any of the flavors of QuickBooks back to 2002, including Pro, Premier, up to Enterprise. So if that's, maybe it was a typo, maybe they meant Cloud QB.
Or Canadian QuickBooks.
Canadian, yes, we do function, okay. Okay, yeah, we do function with Canadian QuickBooks as well. I don't have that here to apologize to show you, but we do have it elsewhere on a virtual box. But yes, we do. We function with that. So we'll work with the harmonized, the whole deal.
Cool. Are bill to addresses posted to QuickBooks?
The bill to address will go over on the customer creation. We'll send the primary over.
Okay. What is the product used to help set up for and setting up manual batch so that we can then move to QBTrack?
That product is called the QB Wizard. I think we're going to have another webinar at that at some point in time, but yeah, you have my contact information. I can certainly show you that. Essentially what it does, it's utilizing the same technology that we're dealing with to do the QBTrack, but essentially we're doing it in reverse. We're extracting information from QuickBooks, such as the chart of accounts and building the GL codes, and we will build all those automatically. Now, I'm going to give a 2-second detour on this. In order to make your manual batch work, you need to have GL codes set in the database, okay? You go to accounting, and edit master tables accounting, or tools option master tables. So you got to bring in your QuickBooks GL accounts, and then you got to build GL code, essentially the debits and credits to the transactions. Now I have 104 of them on there. I just did one for someone who had well over 1,000, about literally 1,400 of them. With the QB wizard, we can create those in literally minutes, okay? And then feel free to call me. I can certainly walk you through what that does.
Someone's asking for your contact information, email address.
Okay, so I'm going to roll back here, and we call, did I put that at the end again? Well, it's Chris@Tigertrack.net, and I'm going to give you our website information as well, and I'll roll back to that slide. But essentially, it's CHRIS@Tigertrack.net, TIGERTRAK.net.
Okay.
I think I have another slide at the end here.
Okay, and then we have how does rep creation work? This has been confusing for my payroll program in QuickBooks.
How does rep creation work with our product? So I'm going to wager what's happened to you is that you've had a whole host of reps being created. Would that be a correct statement to the user? Because what can happen with the manual batch with QBTrack is, not with QBTrack, pardon, with the manual batch is you could have a lot of reps being created. Now, one, what was that the case, Corey?
She said yes.
Okay. So what has happened is you have not set the rep right correctly. You should not be utilizing the initials. You want to make sure you're utilizing the name. That would solve the problem most of the times in the manual batch. Sometimes even in enterprise you're going to run across that. But we solve the problem by not even sending the rep over to QuickBooks. We can do it, but in honesty, there's no point because the rep reports don't work in QuickBooks without items on there. So people want to have the rep on the invoice. You already have the rep inside Tigerpaw. We can send the rep over, but we actually dump it in a memo field to help it run on certain reports. But you can't run sales by customer reports in QuickBooks unless you're sending the items over. And I said earlier, I don't a lot of times tell people to do that. And the reason is going to be is QuickBooks, depending on the version you are, list items are precious. 2, the more items you have in the database, in my experience, the slower it runs. 3, Tigerpaw has the ability to hold a whole lot more items in the database than what QuickBooks does. Tigerpaw is a SQL backend, can hold a lot more than what QuickBooks' engine can hold. Okay, so that would solve the rep problem for you, but we don't send it by default using QBTrack because there's not a lot of point to it, quite frankly.
Okay. Next question. We have Tigerpaw and QuickBooks installed on different servers. How is QBTrack installed in that environment?
Good point. So all we need to have, you can see I actually skipped this screen. Thank you for pointing that out to me. You go into your general options. You're going to pick where your Tigerpaw database is. Mine is on my laptop here, SQL Express. You're going to map to your QuickBooks database. So as long as you're on that same domain and you can access that Tigerpaw database and you're loading QBTrack QuickBooks, if QuickBooks is loaded, you can get at that file. There's no problem whatsoever. It doesn't need to be on the same server at all.
Great. Can you utilize some portions and modules and not others? If I'm not currently using the timesheet function, can I use the AR AP functions only?
Absolutely. All is a question of going through each of the modules like I'm doing here now and uncheck it. I have some people who just use, I had one guy who's just going live with Tigerpaw. All he created was accounts right now because he didn't even do his accounting integration, but he wanted to keep his database in sync, which is a great point because that's a big thing that can really slow you down the pike.
Okay. I'm going to go, Melissa. I'm going to let you. I'm going to turn your audio on here so that you can ask. Melissa has some various questions here. I'm going to go ahead and let her.
Okay.
Speak.
Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Let's have you put in your audio pin. It doesn't look like she's logged into audio, so I'm going to compile the questions for you, Melissa, and get those over to Chris. There's quite a few here. and then he can contact you directly with resolution for these questions. Move on to the last two questions here. Can you quickly review the process in posting the payment in Tigerpaw?
Absolutely. So I'll head back to my Tigerpaw so I get my mouse back. Okay, so applying a payment inside Tigerpaw, you can get at it a couple different ways. One, from the invoice in question. So I did an invoice previously here. Let me, hopefully this one didn't get paid. Okay, so if enter a payment, I can either go under the invoice itself right there. I already have a payment there. Or I go under Tools, Accounting, Enter Payments, and now I can either look by account number or type in an invoice number, which has always been really cool. So now I come out and I see there's no invoices for that. Let me go to Morgan Stores here. So now we can map to the account. Morgan always owes money in my database. So here's all the payments that Morgan has. So it's just a question of entering in the check number, very much like QuickBooks would be, right? And we'll use a more recent one. I don't know if they're even in the database. $308. Why did you guys owe me with $308? That must have been doing some managed services for them. So now I'm going to apply it. And there we go. That invoice will now travel over to the accounting system. And if I go to Morgan in the database, I will be able to view that payment in Tigerpaw. And that's the real benefit. It sounds like you're not doing that right now. But to me, that's just a benefit of utilizing Tigerpaw, leaving QBTrack out of the equation, leaving everything out of the equation. Just think operationally what you'd gain from being able to see that an invoice has been paid. Pretty powerful stuff, especially from like a project. You can view whether it's been paid. From the invoice itself, it's been paid. I mean, if you're not taking advantage of that in Tigerpaw, I really think you're missing out on something. And here's QBTrack. You know, this customer flagged for hold. I haven't run it in a while in this database. They were flagged for credit hold. But that can put the account on hold. So that's the payment entry process. And that can be done automated too for people who are not taking advantage of the LiveBridge functionality of getting payments with either BNG or Mercury. Those payments can be entered automatically with agreements. And if you haven't explored that, I would explore that too, because that's an even bigger time saver.
Great. We have one last question, and then I ask that any more questions that you guys might have that you contact Chris directly at his email. Last question from Vicky. We use different codes in Tigerpaw than we do in QuickBooks. Is this going to be a problem?
As far as chart of accounts, yes, it will. You're going to need to get those in sync. Actually, I see some people kind of dropping off here, Corey. I want to show them something. I'm going to continue to answer that question, but I want to show them the code for getting. So it's got a couple people probably had to leave because of lunch, or they thought it was winding down. There is a code for getting $400 off QBTrack. So that's your price ends up being, it's regularly $14.20, it's now down to $10.20 with that coupon, and that's just for people at this webinar. That's your code. It's going to expire on 4/24, as you can see right there from the animation. And I'm going to give you the link for just a second where you go for that. Court, what's the question again? I'm sorry, I started talking.
That was, we use different codes in Tigerpaw.
Oh, codes, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Court.
Yep.
I thought I would remember before I started talking, but I didn't. The GL codes need to be synced as far as the GL account. So again, to think logically, you have to call one of your friends. They change their phone. You can't call them because they change their phone number. Hope that never happens to you. But if you change the chart of account number in QuickBooks, the integration would drop down at that point. Okay. Here is the link to purchase if you're interested in that and want to take advantage of that discount off there and get it expires on 4/24. That's the link. You can also just go to reportstiger.com and map to it as well. And this is our link for our 30-day demo. I'll leave that up there for a second. So you can jot that down. And the next slide is going to have my contact information again as well for the person who wanted my email address in case I said it too quickly, which is very possible that I did because I talk fast.
Can you run that first link back up?
Absolutely.
There
you go. Absolutely.
Again.
And again, you can just go to reportstiger.com. There'll be a link for software on there, and then QBTrack.
Your contact information is out on these sites.
It is, and it's also going to be on the last slide, Corey, as well. And we also have some free Crystal reports out there for you as well to take advantage of. There's an accounting closing report that you might be interested in. So take a look at the free ones. There's also some paid reports out there that you probably would be of interest to you as well. But that's the link directly for the QBTrack.
Great.
And I'm going to put my contact information up again for those who came in a little late. Oh, it's not coming up, is it? Not rendering.
It's ran out of ink.
Yeah, he's talking too much. Let me head up here. It's all on the top slide. We'll go to reverse in time. We'll start per hour here. There we go. There's my information. Sorry about that, folks. I hate having to flip back. Picked a bad slide there.
And you will be seeing an email from Tigerpaw to everybody who has attended. We will be sending out the recording of this webinar so you can pick up this information, links, and contact information in that recording as well.
And Corey, I'll email you those codes as well for the email as well. Okay, I'll get those. Yeah, hopefully can include those in there.
Perfect. Yep. I want to say thanks to Chris and Tigertrack for presenting today, and thanks to everybody for attending. Any closing comments, Chris?
No. Again, if you are manually batching, take advantage of it. You already have everything you need to get it rolling, so take advantage of that 30-day demo. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by what it can give you. If you're not even manually batching, please, at least at a minimum, manually batch, because the time savings at that point in time are going to be in the hours per day, not 30 minutes a day. So if you maybe only the manual batch is enough for you to do that at a minimum, please. And thank you very much for your attending. I greatly appreciate all your patience. And thank you, Corey, for allowing me to do this.
You're welcome, Chris. Thank you.
All right, folks,
Bye.
Take care now.